Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scott McKay.
How's it going, gentlemen? Welcome again to yet another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. My name is Scott McKay, at Scott McKay on Twitter and on Clubhouse, Real Scott McKay on Instagram. You can find all the YouTube goodies by going to YouTube and searching my name, ScotMcKay. The website is mountaintoppodcast.com. And I still invite you guys who are not yet on board the Facebook group to join us and have all the fun we're having at the Mountaintop Summit on Facebook. Today, we're going to talk about something that I've been meaning to talk about with you guys on this show for quite a while. But you know, I've said this before, and such is the case this time as well. I just needed the right guest who was a subject matter expert in this area. Her name is Sabrina Shaheen Cronin, and she's with the eponymous Cronin Law Firm up in Michigan. And she is not only an attorney, she's also in the realm of self-help and other wonderful things that we'll talk about. And the topic that she is so good at addressing with me and with you today is how to remain friends with exes. And perhaps maybe we'll talk a little bit about co-parenting too. So without anything further, Sabrina, welcome.
Hi. Thanks so much, Scott, for having me.
Hey, it's our pleasure. Is the weather starting to turn cold in Michigan yet?
It is, but we have the best falls. You know, it's just so pretty with the trees and the changing of the seasons. It's a great time of year.
True. And great football games too.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. All right. So tell us a little bit about what you do so the guys are tuned into that.
So I do a lot of self-empowerment in addition to my legal work. And I have found over the years that with a lot of the work that I've done in the law, people in general need a lot of self-awareness and more self-esteem and self-growth in order to get to the other side of whatever legal matter they're facing. And that could be a divorce. That could be a business venture gone bad. That could be a custody dispute. That could be a personal injury matter. So whatever legal matter is upon them, I find that the best person dealing with that is the one who is the most self-aware. And in order to get that person self-aware, you really need to really handhold them and coach them through a very difficult, tumultuous time.
So you're a family lawyer mostly? Or
yes, now my career has transitioned more, my focus has transitioned more to family law, custody disputes, prenups, postnups, etc.
Right on. So as you mentioned there in passing, self-awareness is a very key topic nowadays, kind of a hot button as it's in remarkably short supply out there, isn't it?
Yes, it is actually, because people are so trigger happy in terms of it's not my fault, it's everybody else's fault. You know, they don't look at themselves as being a part of the equation. And in order to effectuate change in anything, you first have to look within and change yourself.
Or they don't see anybody else as part of the equation, only themselves. Either can be true, right?
Either can be true, right.
Okay, so let's talk about this idea of being friends with our exes. I think the first place to go there is in the obvious direction, Sabrina, which is, you know, why on God's green earth do I still want to be friends with my ex? Are we exclusively talking about being friends with an ex who we were married to and share custody with so we can co-parent? Or are there good reasons to remain friends with exes, either girlfriends or people we've been married to, frankly, above and beyond that?
You know, that's a very subjective and personal answer, because different people come in people's lives for different reasons, different seasons. And sometimes you've just outgrown someone. Sometimes that person is just way too toxic to even have in your life. If the other person isn't self-evolved as well, then remaining friends with that person may not be in your best interest. And it's very important in making that analysis to have self-awareness and make sure you have boundaries and make sure you're doing it for the right reasons and not unhealthy reasons or any other kind of reason that isn't healthy and happy for yourself and for the other person as well, because what's best for you is what's best for them. And likewise, what's best for them ultimately will be best for you.
Now, see, a lot of us, men and women, this is not gender specific by any stretch, have really a hard time saying no to people in our past, especially if they were hot, especially for guys, she's kind of sexy and she did what's commonly known as zombieing us, where she left for a while and then boom, she resurfaced. Sometimes it's really tempting to take her back again because our cognitive tendency is to think of the good times with people and blot out the bad times. And that kind of shields us from the reality of how toxic it may be to have someone back in our lives again after a while. You see any of that happening in your practice?
Oh, I see that a lot. I see people getting divorced and remarried to the same person. I see people getting divorced and then having children with that person after the divorce and being with that person for years and years later. I've seen it all. And whether it's toxic or not is, again, a very subjective perspective, because what might be toxic for you might not be toxic for that other person. So it's very important to be self-aware, to be very clear on what you want, to have a good set of boundaries to discern whether you can be friends with this person or not, or whether you should allow that person in your life or not, regardless of what they look like. Someone had asked me before, if this guy wasn't as good looking, would you still be dating him? And, you really have to ask yourself that question. What is the reason why you're dating this woman? Is it, or wanting this person in your life? You have to break it all down if you care to. Some people just don't care to. So they just want to have fun in the moment.
Yeah, I wish I had $1 for every time I told a guy I was coaching, hey, why don't you find another equally sexy woman, but this time find one who actually treats you right.
Yeah.
That would be a help. Yeah.
Right. But that starts from within, Scott.
Yeah.
You need to feel that way about yourself.
That's what we call deserving what you want around here.
Believing you deserve.
Well, be the version of yourself who is going to be attractive to the kind of person you also want to attract.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
If you want to date someone that has all those qualities that you're listing on that piece of paper, well, then do you possess them yourself?
Right. Exactly. You nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something nobody ever considers in the realm of dating and relationship advice nowadays, it seems. It's, you deserve this. Let's help you get the person you want. And on that note, you mentioned something that I think bears a little bit more discussion. And that's toxicity isn't always recognized by both parties in a relationship.
True.
The first example of that came to mind is something we talk about around here quite a bit, which is where someone is toxic in their level of selfishness. They throw the term narcissist around a lot, probably too much nowadays. And gaslighting has become the favorite term of people who are probably, frankly, doing the gaslighting themselves in context. But nevertheless, if I'm a really selfish person and I have someone in my life who just keeps giving and wishing they could do more for me, hey, that doesn't seem toxic to me at all. Right? And meanwhile, the other person may also be blind to that toxicity because they're so pre-wired to be Mr. or Ms. Nice guy or girl, respectively. And they keep giving. And when it isn't good enough for the very selfish person, they resolve to do more. And only later do they wake up from that slumber and figure out that it was toxic. That's the first example of how that might work that came to mind. Can you think of any other examples of where maybe only one out of the two partners would think that the toxicity is really all that toxic?
Well, sometimes it's a matter of, let's just say, in a similar example, the woman is a real witch and she's demanding and I have found in my experience, when I was growing up, it seemed like all the witches got the great men. And because they kept them hopping or guessing, or those men thought they were sexy or, great in bed or whatever it was. And the people that were, or the women that were low key, no drama, more attentive or whatever, like the nice guy or the nice girl didn't get their guy. So for the woman who's that witch, she doesn't think it's toxic. But for the man who continues to be like that puppy dog, he gets kicked, he goes back, he gets kicked, he goes back, he keeps going back and back and back. It's like, well, once he realizes, whether through his friends or his family or people closer to him, or even maybe himself, he wakes up one day and says, hey, this is not healthy for me. That's another example.
Oh, yeah. I was reminded of a book called How to Be the Jerk Women Love that was written years ago. So, man, that kind of goes both ways too. Women find a guy who doesn't treat them right, and they're thinking, oh, well, this is just the way things were supposed to be because it's what I saw growing up. Or probably the holy grail of potential abusers, they find someone who believes, quote unquote, all of them are this way, and that's just tough. In other words, all men are jerks, all men are cheaters, all women are gold diggers, all women are witches with a capital B, as you've been saying. And that's toxic because it's not true. But if we find someone, well, let's put it this way. If we find someone who finds us and discovers that we will put up with and welcome that mentality, well, that's where the toxicity starts, and it's definitely one-sided. Because indeed, the person who is the quote-unquote victim in this situation, and I don't like that word, but it's convenient here, is thinking this is normal. This is the way it always has been. This is the way it was growing up, and this is the way it ever shall be. World without end, amen, and it's just not. I mean, I remember I looked in the mirror and said to myself, literally, look, your sister isn't crazy. Your mother isn't crazy. Most of your friends' wives and girlfriends aren't crazy. Most of your female coworkers aren't crazy. Why don't you get it through your numb skull that all women aren't necessarily crazy? And from then on, I literally flipped a switch, Sabrina, saying to myself, I'm just not going to welcome crazy women anymore. And let me tell you, when I made that announcement on the first couple or few dates after that, I cringed. I kind of face palmed and looked through my fingers tentatively to see if the woman was still there. And all I got in return was, I am so glad you said that, because your willingness to throw that on the table shows me that, hey, you're probably not crazy either. And you know what? You and I are of similar mindset there. I don't want a crazy guy because I am a sane woman. And it was amazing. I just didn't date crazy women anymore. Go figure, And so I was the one inviting that toxicity based on having, been a codependent in my first marriage that these guys know all about and which we documented on this show. But yeah, I love that example because I think that catches a lot of us off guard. It's like, hey, you know what? This is normal when it really isn't. And therefore we are the ones who are being blindsided by that toxic relationship, right? Jealousy to me is another one. If someone is extremely jealous, they become almost possessive. And it's easy to believe, yeah, we're the problem because my jealous, manipulative mate said so. But we're not. And that is an abusive relationship, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
So what are the situations where it would be perhaps a good idea to, maybe welcome somebody back in our lives or continue with them in our lives, even though we're probably not in a romantic relationship anymore? You kind of caught me off guard, by the way, talking about people making babies after the divorce. That's a new one on me, and I've been around the block a few times. But I'm sure you have lots of other examples to posit next to this particular point. So go for it.
Well, Scott, I think when two people come together, if there is real love there, a deep foundation, if they're in love, and then they realize perhaps they're not compatible and they are mature about it and they have deep discussions and they're good friends at the heart of it. They are very good friends and they respect each other. Then I think in that situation, if they can handle it emotionally, if they've healed, usually in a relationship, one person cares more than the other. One person can get over the other person easier. And if there's a mutual meeting of the minds or a time to heal and there's a respect there, I think that's the key word. It's a respectfulness and a kindness. And if that can still persist, then I believe that the two people can come back and be friends. Maybe not obviously to the level that they once were, but I see it all the time with married couples, especially if they've had children, and then they just hate each other afterward. And then the children are left in the middle. I'm very passionate about making sure that both parents act in the children's best interest. And I do lots of workshops on that. So what I find is such an immaturity, and the parents are just horrible to one another because they're vindictive. They want to get back at one another. They have high emotions and they don't care that their children, their poor children, are in the middle of this awful ugliness. And what they don't realize is the damage that they're doing for their children. It serves the kids better when parents can get along. They don't necessarily have to respect the other parent, especially if there's been horrible abuse or such damaging actions from one party to the other. But the children deserve a level of respectfulness and kindness shown to the other parent.
First of all, before we even move on, I have to salute you, Sabrina, for being a family law attorney who, A, is actually acting in the best interest of the children and actually acting in the best interest of the two parties involved in the divorce. Because, man, it's lucrative to get people to fight and hate each other for a family law attorney, isn't it?
Most attorneys do that. Most attorneys will incite issues where there otherwise were none. Most attorneys will drag things out just for that money. I have seen horrible, unethical behavior only for their gain, and they think that they're doing their clients. I truly believe that. They believe they're doing their clients a great service by being aggressive, by, making sure that they know they're going to fight, when instead they need to get a handle more on their clients, coaching them to say, look, you have to live with this person for the rest of your life, not, logistically live with them, but you have to deal with them while your children are young and while you're dealing with them. And you have to make sure you're doing what's in the best interest of your children, because the divorce is a very finite period of time. Although some people carry it out for years, which in my mind is absolutely ludicrous because it's a colossal waste of money, time, resources, effort, energy, and it does nobody any good except line the attorney's pockets. That being said, the attorney needs to learn how to coach their client better, to let them know what is reasonable, to manage their expectations. Especially when there's children involved, they need to guide them to the point where, look, Joe or Sandra or whoever we're dealing with, you have to be reasonable here because this other person is your children's, father or mother or whatever, and fighting over dishes or withholding the child's iPad or backpack, when they go to their other person's house. I see that so often. It just drives me crazy. Does the child no good? What are you doing? How would you feel if your parent did that to you? How would you feel about ping-ponging back and forth to the other person's house? You never had to do that. Why are you being so awful to your child? All they want to do is carry their iPad back to their mom's house. Just because she didn't buy it, I bought it for you. You can take it with you. Scott, it's crazy to me, the level of ugliness and awfulness that I see in my line of work.
Yeah, I can sense the passion and authenticity in your voice as you talk about it. I've known family law attorneys to be in cahoots with each other to drag it out. You think this person's on my team, they're really on each other's team. And it's disgusting. Yeah,
that's beyond me. I just don't operate that way. There's the saying, how he does one thing is how he does all things. Imagine that lawyer in his personal life. I wouldn't care to be friends with that person.
I wish you were my lawyer back in the day. I could have used you at that point.
But like you said before, you have to be ready to hear it. A lot of clients don't want to hear what I have to say because they want to be vindictive or they just want to get back at their ex or they don't care. And I do try to do what my clients want me to do, but sometimes it just won't serve them. And I do have to tell them, this is not in your best interest. This is not in your children's best interest.
Well, you also talked about this idea of pitting our children against each other and against the other parent by making it really not all that fun for them to go to the other parent's house. That's the example you mentioned, but that was what you were getting at.
There's a lot of alienation. There's a lot of disparagement, and they don't realize the damage they're doing to the children when they do those things.
And also it further exacerbates that sense of rivalry or even animosity between the two divorced ex-spouses because, you certainly can't get along better with the ex and co-parent effectively when you're trying to make the child or children love you more, as it were. Yeah, you know what? You mentioned a key word earlier, which is maturity. And I think a lot of divorced or divorcing spouses act like little children themselves instead of looking at the bigger picture and having a sane, mature outlook on this. And, I understand like we talked about before, that we live in a very opinionated world nowadays. And if you get in the right or wrong echo chamber on either Twitter or Facebook, your BFFs will start telling you what you need to do. And, you go into some of these anonymous groups, like I've been in the men's groups before. And what'll start happening is what I call the Dr. Laura effect. God bless Dr. Laura Schlesinger. But as a radio talk show host and a psychologist, she was known for hearing 10 seconds of someone's life and pronouncing sweeping, life-changing recommendations to them, only to have the person on the other end of the phone say, well, actually, it's not like that at all. There's this other factor I didn't tell you. And Dr. Laura would go, oh, well, that changes everything. It was more entertainment than real actual psychological help. It was like Lucy from Peanuts, 2 cents and a phone line will get you some psychological help. But you see that a lot nowadays, perhaps even to an exponential degree when you look at like some of these men's groups and they're asking a group of 50 or 60,000 anonymous internet users who happen to be male like them, okay, well, I have this situation with my ex and we share a child together. What do I do? And everybody's like, kick her to the curb, leave her, and they don't know anything about this guy's life. And God help him, God help his wife, God help the poor child or children if he actually takes that advice and follows it. But nowadays, people are getting all of this dime store shade tree input from God knows where. And that just isn't very mature or sane now, is it?
No. And I think the reason, Scott, is because people are so judgmental more than ever. And they're not only judgmental, but they feel they have the right to tell everybody what they think and why without having the global perspective on the issue or the topic. We see it a lot in politics. We see it a lot in, the media. We see it a lot with celebrity, famous people and just in general. And I don't know if it's because things are happening faster and faster with all of the the globalization of everything. And we're just all so much more just connected. But I find as many advancements as we've made as a society, we have taken steps back in our humanity and our really love for people and our valuing people in general. And part of what I try to achieve with my clients is seeing the broader picture, seeing all perspectives. But Scott, it takes a very patient and mature person to take a step back and say, oh, I didn't really look at it that way, or, oh, I didn't put myself in their shoes, or, oh, that's why they're reacting to me this day or, at this time. And until people start to do that and have more sensitivity, more sympathy and empathy, which is completely devoid in our culture today, it seems.
No kidding.
Until we have that, we're never going to have a unification on either a worldly scale or a societal scale or anything. And even boiling it down to families or friends, we need to learn how to be more sympathetic and empathetic and take some accountability for our own actions and put ourselves in other people's shoes before we can start judging anything on anyone.
Well, one thing's for sure. The internet does not love you. And second of all, when everybody's an expert, nobody's an expert. 2 of the truest statements relative to this discussion we're having that I can think of. And indeed, when people start getting a group of people who complain the way they do and think weirdly the way they do, it's easy to believe everybody else agrees with us too, and that we're on quote unquote the right side of history and everybody else can go to hell in a handbasket. And that's just very bad for people relating to and respecting each other. So I couldn't agree more.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I want to move on to some very practical steps. Let's say there's been someone in my life and we've parted and haven't thought about each other for months or years. And then they turn up on Facebook, or you get the DM that says, hey, on LinkedIn, I remember you, you were great, but you're in a relationship and you're thinking this might not be the best idea, or, under what circumstance would it be the best idea to go ahead and let people back into your life, at least on Facebook, so you can see what's going on with them? Because, we might be curious. What are the boundaries that we should set there?
Well, Scott, it's all about intention, right? What is your intention? what agreement do you and your current partner have about this sort of thing? And I think you should. I think it's an expectation that the two of you have as a couple that should discuss it. I believe that members of the opposite sex can be friends if the intention is real and true and authentic and not someone trying to get in someone else's pants, right? So, if this other person that comes in your life, you had good memories or fond memories of, whether it was a past lover or even just a friend from high school, your current partner and you should be, in equal mindset in terms of that situation. And you should be open and honest. And it's funny because people tell me, well, I didn't lie. Well, an omission is a lie, by not being open and honest with your partner about an ex-lover coming back in your life for whatever reason. You don't know that other person's intentions. The only intentions you know are yourself, those of you. And so if you make that known to your current partner, well, then there's going to be no feelings of insecurity and you're not going to spur any kind of, dissonance or anything. So I believe that if you are open and you express your intentions to your current partner and there really is no harm, then say hey back. But, when they want to meet you next time they, DM you and they want to meet you at a bar at, 9:00 at night, then just watch your steps and just have a clear focus on what it is you want.
Here's a very practical note. If they're recently divorced and you're still in a relationship or you're in a happy relationship, say no. Don't answer it. Ignore it. That's my 2 cents on that. I tell you what, I would love to hear your take on what the warning signs are. Even if I'm well-intentioned and I want to stay friends with my ex and we've finished up the divorce and we're trying to co-parent here, what are the warning signs that I'm maybe slipping into a toxic pattern here and it's going to get ugly? How can we nip that in the bud early on? It's
going to get ugly in terms of how you're dealing with that person.
How you're dealing with that person, maybe how you're feeling towards the situation in general, the kids being negatively affected by it. Any direction you want to take, the answer is fine with me. What are some of the red flags that you're kind of headed down the wrong path and starting to get a little too angry or a little bit too bitter or a little bit too jealous or are perhaps about to make a decision you'll regret later?
The first thing you really need to do is take a step back. Really take a pause. And if you are becoming a person that you don't recognize or that you don't like, or that your friends and family are saying, hey, what's going on with you? You really need to take a step back and become focused on your self-growth, taking care of yourself, the rituals that you need to do every single day to have clear mind and a clear heart and to really know who you are. And the best advice I can give you is just really focus on being a better version of yourself. Because if you want to change your reality, you have to change who you are on the inside first. You cannot effectuate change in somebody else, but you and your reactions and your actions can certainly have influence over how people perceive you. And that perception by the other person will in fact change their behavior toward you. So once you take the time to really become you, the best version of you, and look at the challenge that you had in your marriage and then the consequent divorce as something that propelled you to the next level to make you better. Iron sharpens iron. We get better through our adversity and our strife. You don't grow in times of, rainbows and fairy tales. You grow when you're down and out, when things get tough, when you're at your worst. When you look at that life challenge as something, as a positive, that happened to you for a reason and you can turn it around, well, then you can turn even this little incident around by getting a hold of yourself, getting a hold of your emotions, focusing on yourself, and then everything else will fall into place.
The silver lining of hitting rock bottom is that you bounce upward. Hopefully. Another great side benefit of deserving what you want is not only are you likely not to repeat history with another negative relationship just like the last one, but you just may, as potential danger zone, I guess it's a little bit of a warning that you should heed, you may start attracting your ex back into your life. She's like, hey, you weren't like this when we were married. You've improved. I want the new improved version of this guy. And then, of course, you have to make a judgment call, like you said. And, you mentioned earlier that people have divorced and gotten remarried. If it's a new relationship they're headed to, instead of just a reprise of the old one, more power to them. But I love what you had to say, because it was centered on self instead of watching out for someone else or watching your back or weaponizing your feelings towards your ex, etc. And that, of course, has been consistent with what you've been saying all along. Your message is very clear, and I love it. Gentlemen, you can learn more about Sabrina Shaheen Cronin by going to a URL that I've set up for you, and that's mountaintoppodcast.com/Sabrina, just like the Good Witch from the Archie comics. You told me earlier she is the Good Witch. She isn't just named after her. So, Sabrina, what are the guys going to find when they go to your website?
Scott, well, I have a personal website as well as a law firm, the Cronin Law Firm. And I do a lot of workshops on co-parenting, on self-empowerment, on the art of self-love. And in my law firm, we practice everything from family law, custody disputes, business, transactional, and litigation, some personal injury as well. And I'm licensed in lots of different states, and I practice all over the country. And I do a lot of blending of my legal expertise with really that growth factor that helps people to transition to be the best version of themselves. Because I truly believe, Scott, that everybody deserves happiness, but you just have to work at it a little bit. And I think the world will be a better place if we are just showing ourselves some kindness and everyone else in this life.
Well, I'll tell you what, gentlemen, if I have caught you at that inopportune time in your life where you could use a family lawyer, I may just have found her for you. Her name is Sabrina Shaheen Cronin, and thank you so much for joining us today, Sabrina. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Scott, and I really appreciate your patience and your time today, and it's been so fun, and I hope I can come back.
Yeah, all of this is going to be edited out, but for the benefit of the guys listening, we had a significant number of technical challenges along the way here, and of course, it'll be smooth sailing when these guys finally hear it. So, but no worries. It's been my pleasure. Terrific to have you on, and I think it's a breath of fresh air to hear what you have to say.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome. And guys, if you have not yet gone to mountaintoppodcast.com, pass go, collect $200, and go straight away and check out my daily newsletter. It's fluff free, and it won't cost you a dime. What it will do is make you better with women, help you be a better man in a myriad of ways. Also, you can sign up to talk to me for 25 minutes about what's going on in your life right now. Get the right woman in your life, so hopefully you don't have to hire someone like Sabrina someday. You can just live happily with her, go through life together, building a legacy. That is what we're all looking for. And if you want to get that woman in your life, the first step is to talk to me for free. It's 25 minutes. If it goes 30 or 40 minutes, no worries. But what you have to do is sign up at mountaintoppodcast.com, and we'll get on the phone together and talk about it. If you have not checked out the boots, the jeans, and the new heavy hoodie from Origin in Maine, guys, you got to get you some. I mean, you want to dress like a man and have these clothes that you spent your hard-earned money on last for like 10 or 20 years. Origin in Maine is your company. Jocko Willink himself is not about being a victim. He's about high quality. You know that if you've ever heard him talk for 10 seconds about anything. So head over to Origin in Maine by clicking the link at mountaintoppodcast.com or going to mountaintoppodcast.com/origin. Also, listen, guys, my friends over at herosoap.com will help you clean up, literally and figuratively. You use their soap, you use their body wash. I promise you, you will have just a little bit of an edge with the ladies out there because you will smell great, look great. It's all about cleaning up, and you will clean up extra well by visiting my friends at Hero Soap. And you can do that also by heading to mountaintoppodcast.com or by going to mountaintoppodcast.com/Hero Soap. As always, you can use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10 to get 10% off when you partake of the goods from either of our fine sponsors. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X and Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.